All right, looks like we started already. Hey, Tony, how are you doing?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Greg.
Good. So hello, welcome to this week's live stream. My name is Greg with KoN Nerds, and I am joined by Tony with VR Reviews. This is a weekly YouTube live stream where we discuss VR games, experiences, utilities, and hardware we've discovered, purchased, or played over the past week, as well as all VR news that's fit to discuss. You can find us here Thursdays at 10 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, which is 6 p.m. New York and 8 a.m. Melbourne. So Tony, do me a favor, introduce yourself and let everyone know how they can find you.
So you can find me on YouTube. You just type in VR Reviews. You'll see that little logo down there. You might need to filter the search by channel, and I'll pop up there. I mainly focus on Quest content, so if you do love your Quest, then it might be worth considering checking my channel out. I do top 10s, product reviews, and things like that.
Yeah, man.
So that's a bit about me.
Definitely. I love your channel. I love watching your reviews. I don't even bother making reviews. I just go straight to yours. I think everyone else should go to your channel as well for those. And for anyone that doesn't know me, my name is Greg, and you can find me at YouTube channel KoN Nerds by searching KoN Nerds VR on YouTube. So this week we have a number of topics to cover, and we'll get started with games that we've played. So first, I want to make sure that one that we're looking at first is Shoes of Loki. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this is Shores of Loki, and this is one game I was playing on App Lab recently, and I really was blown away by this game. So this is like a puzzle game where you put together the pieces. Now, there's games like this already on the Quest, but there's nothing quite like this in the sense that this has a strong narrative and story component to it as well. Now, I won't go into it all the details, but essentially the story is that you're there to rebuild your land, your forgotten world, by piecing it together. And you get this really awesome sense of scale as you put this puzzle together, and then you see it just grow into this large kind of piece of land, and you see your world being built around you. It's really trippy, and I can't recommend it enough. So that's one of the games I've been playing this week. That's just been so much fun and really a big surprise to me. And that's in App Lab for anyone who's interested in checking that out.
Okay, very cool. So let's go on to our next one here.
So this next one,
yep, go ahead.
It's Swordsman VR. It's out on a couple of platforms already. This is PlayStation VR already. It's out on PC VR 2, and it's just come to the Quest with the Advanced Combat update. Now, with Swordsman VR, as you can probably tell, it's a melee medieval fighting game, and it's meant to be as realistic as possible. So what you'll do is you'll find when you hit someone with a sword, if they're in full plate mail, your sword just won't pierce through it. It will bounce off. And so you have to hit them in the weak points and be really quite strategic with your combat in order to get your upper hand on the opponent. Now, sometimes there are moments when the physics don't work quite well, or things don't happen as you expect. There are some glitches and things like that. So it's not perfect, but certainly is a fantastic workout. And when you do have when it does work, when you do have a great sort of sword fight with your opponent, it works really well. It's a lot of fun, and one of the best melee games I think that I've played. I'll rank it up with the Blade and Sorcery. I know it's pretty high praise, but that's just my opinion. I think it's a fantastic melee game for $19.99 in App Lab right now.
Very cool. I like that a lot. What's been your experience with how well it actually handles being a sword game? Are we out of the days of the Wii where it felt like we were just moving gyroscopically and our thrust and parries didn't work?
Yeah, look, you can't sort of wave your sword around like a nutter and expect to win in this game. You know, you've got to be a bit strategic with where you're aiming your weapon. And so, absolutely, I think, and also weaker hits will not register as much damage as sort of the stronger hits. If you make a weak swing, you're not going to do
Yeah.
as much damage. So, there's all these aspects in there that really make it a game that goes beyond, say, a Wii game where you might just wiggle them with the motor around, and you get some. You can win just by doing that. You can't do it in this game. There is some strategy to it. Greg, what games have you played in terms of that genre that you found, in terms of that like melee kind of genre that you found to be quite good?
I I have been disappointed. Well, first of all, I'm not much of a regular sword fantasy kind of guy, like any like
Mm.
medieval times, that kind of thing. Typically, when I'm doing anything like that, it's going to be bow and arrow. And I cannot remember the name of the game, but there was a game that was on PC VR, and it looked like someone put a ton of time into it. But I think when the Quest came out, the Quest wasn't powerful enough to do it. But that's about like there's what's the one with the orcs, and you got the bow and arrow, Elven Assassin. So that's about
Yeah,
as
Assassin.
like medievally as I get. Because the only time I want
Mm.
to have a sword in my hand is if it's filled with laser juice and shooting forward, and I'm hitting someone looks like Darth Vader. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I am so much more the
Yeah,
sci-fi
yeah,
guy than I am
sure.
the medieval guy. But that said, other than a small number of demos where there was a saber of some sort. I'm not going to count Beat Saber, although I'll say with Beat Saber, where I think probably most of us have most of our attention and time when it comes to like
Mm.
using a saber. Uh, that has been a really good experience. Now, if you've ever done like green screen work, use something like Live or Live on Steam VR, where you can back up the camera and see yourself in the game. I've noticed that swords, at least they are in Beat Saber, they're a lot longer than it appears when you're in game. And I wonder if that speaks to the difficulty of actually putting someone in game against, let's say, another person with a sword. It's one of those
Mm.
things that, like when you're walking down the street, how fast you move walking down the street versus when you're playing Doom, like Doom and Quake and all those. I think they said that running in that's more like 35 miles per hour. Like in game,
Mm.
the physics and your expectations are different than what they are in real life. So I actually kind of wonder how good that is overall. But I have no problem, with sword games, and this game looks fantastic. Um, so let's take a look at the next game you have, and I'm intrigued because I don't know anything about it.
So this is Dragon Kung Fu. Sorry, this is Travel the Words. So Travel the Words is really surprised me. So it really surprised me because it wasn't exactly what I expected. You think this is, as you can see, it's a word search game, right? You have to find the words in the word search puzzle. Pretty simple. And you think a game like this wouldn't be well suited for VR, but it was a lot more suited for VR than I expected, to be honest, because you're surrounded by this environment. So you choose your environment, it might be medieval, and you've got that kind of theme in your word search as well. So if it's medieval, you might be searching for words like armor or joust or whatever it might be. And then as you tick off the words, you get a fun fact. And with some of the environments too, it starts filling out the environment. So you might be on, say, inside a harbor, you find the word ship, like you see here, and then the ship appears when you find it. And so your environment fills out as you complete the
Oh,
word
that's
search.
really cool.
Mm.
I love that. So how does this work versus doing, like, is it worth doing in VR, or would you rather just do something like this on like an iPhone?
Yeah, well, that's. I mean, I think that it does work well in VR. I mean, look, you can do both. You can do either, but this it's not the perfect game for VR. But I do think there is an advantage to playing it in VR because I was sitting there with the headset on, and you're surrounded in this nice, interesting, peaceful environment most of the times, except when that train drives in front of your face. It's like this nice, relaxing environment, and you get to sort of take in your surroundings as you're doing the word search puzzle, and then you see things pop up as well in the environment. It captures your interest. It's a lot more engaging than, say, doing it on the iPhone or doing it on a
Yeah.
piece of paper.
Yeah.
So I did find it added something. The VR, it's maybe not the best game for VR, but it did add something certainly. And it's worthwhile. Yeah.
There are a number of games that I think have been done exceptionally well. But the idea of maybe going to another room and putting on a headset, and
Mm.
even if it's not PC VR where you have to have a dedicated space, instead you have a Quest and you can do it anywhere you want. You're sitting next to someone in the living room. You don't want to stand up. You don't want to do anything like that. You don't want to make large gestures. So you end up still going someplace else. And to go to another room and spend time to play a word game, like a crossword puzzle game or anything, even if I may like it very much, I don't know if I would do it. And I think to me, that is, there's like a convenience factor. Like there was a point where I think everyone started getting into photography, and it was right when it became convenient with smartphones. And I feel like this is the opposite. It's inconveniencing me to play a crossword puzzle game because I have to put on a headset and maybe even go to another room. Um,
Mm.
so I don't know if I would play this, but it looks intriguing. And I'm sorry, where did you say you find it? Is it on App Lab?
So this is an App Lab game too.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, it looks super intriguing. Um,
Yeah,
yep. All right.
that's a good
So
point. I mean,
no, go ahead.
I think like I think that would be a barrier for a lot of people in the sense that this might be the type of game that, like Candy Crush, you're going to pick up on your phone, you play it for 10 minutes, and then you put your phone down when you're waiting in a waiting room, or you're in the car, or whatever.
Sure.
You're going to be. This is a game that might be a pick up and play kind of game for some people, but
Sure.
I guess it depends on where you're at. Some people might be, if you're more into these word search kind of games, it might be worth that factor. But I think you're right. This will be a barrier to playing a game like this. The fact that, is it actually worth putting on a headset to do a word search? Well, that's going to depend on the person and how much you're into these kind of puzzle games.
For sure.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So we got another one coming up, and that is, whoops, sorry about. And that is a new version of Demio. We actually have a brand new quest out, and that quest. And I apologize. Give me just a second. That quest is Owana. Well, it's Curse of the Serpent Lord. So with this whole new quest comes a brand new character, which is Owana, and she's a warlock. Now, real quick, I always thought a warlock was a male witch, but clearly I'm basing that off of like Bewitched logic from the 1960s. I have no certainty whatsoever. But she has what they say here is a trusty Astacat Kana, or Kana, which they bring a mix of all new spells to the party. So here's the deal. She's a warlock. She has spells that I've not seen before. She has a cat that she can use to attack. And it's kind of like the Bard with the last update, where with the Bard will charge a person up, let's say, and they have to stay with you. Got to keep the Bard alive. And over time, you can get multiple levels of experience and hit points to use until you die. And then if you die or if you get hit, then it all goes back down to zero, and the Bard has to make all that effort again. Now you've got, in the same way, you're a Bard, but instead of giving any type of power to the rest of your party, you're giving it to Kana, which is the cat. And so you can actually get the cat up to a higher level where it becomes like a more effective weapon. But then, of course, it becomes more sacred. You don't want it to get hurt because then it starts all over again at zero. I think it's a great mixture of the Bard along with, like just a normal spell user. And, graphically, they've even bumped up the entire game graphically on this. I am so darn impressed with this. Now, are you a Demio player?
I've played. Yes, I have played the first couple of campaigns.
Okay.
I haven't played it for a while. I have to admit, but it is a game that I do like to, or I would like to revisit certainly. But I think hats off to developers for providing so much content. It's like
Yeah.
the Pistol Whip guys. I mean, how
Yeah,
much updated content have we received for these games,
it's
and we've just
crazy.
paid the once, for all this great stuff. I mean, that was one of my criticisms when it first came out, that it was a bit light on content, but now I can't complain. You've got so much there, so
Right,
much value in this game here.
right.
I mean, what's your favorite aspect of Demio?
It's a silly one. There's a power and an odd feeling that I love of being over top of that table and then reaching in and pulling it apart and zooming in, getting even closer. Uh, that's like one of the things about VR that I love. It's doing things that I couldn't be able to do otherwise. Let's say like flying. Uh, how many times did you play any type of board game? Like tabletop, especially, because that's what this is emulating, right? A tabletop game with like whatever 9,000 characters or, but I would love I'd love to even do this with like Monopoly. It sounds so silly, but I want to get down in there. I want to feel like I'm really there. And I also want to back up. I also love the interactivity between up to 4 players and seeing them and working together. So they've added a PC version of this, and the PC version, it works, it's functional, but to me, it very much feels like they've shoehorned a really great VR game into a flat screen experience. Like Rec Room did that. You can play Rec Room on a phone, an iPad, on your PC. And they've done a great job of making you not even realize that that person in front of you is on a PC, because like their avatar kind of moves a little bit. And there are certain things that maybe they're not really doing, but it makes it feel like they're really there. Where at least thus far, at least the last build I played at the PC game, the PC player looks like a guy just sitting there with glasses and he's kind of just looking forward, maybe looks down every now and then. But the actual player can be someplace else on the board. His camera could be looking straight at you. And because his head isn't in the same place as his view, you have no idea. So they can still draw on the screen, because there's planning you have to do in Demio. You want to say, I want to go here, let's go over this way. He still does that, but you don't see the character, the avatar of the person doing it. I think it kind of just robbed a lot of the magic from it. And I actually made not a complaint, but I suggested on the Demio Discord that this was an issue that I had. And as a VR player, I didn't like it as much. And I had a couple PC-based players jump on me saying that, it's just fine for them. Well, yeah, it's fine for them because everyone else they're playing with are VR players. So they get the experience of someone looking this way and then looking at you in your eyes and talking to you, which is the magic of social VR, especially, I think it's a fantastic game. Have you played with up to 4 people?
I have, yeah, and it's so much fun. I think it's one of my dreams come true. We talk about
Yeah.
a bit on this channel about our dreams coming true with VR, and that's one of my things. I remember as a kid, I did like ball games, but sometimes never had the people to play it with, or I'd play with one other person. But this brings ball games to you can play anytime you want within the reason with a bunch of people, and you don't need someone to come around your house to play it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge thing. That's massive. And you can have an experience that's almost real, almost as real as the real thing, because obviously, yeah, you can do it on the flat screen, but it's obviously not the same. It's picking
Sure.
up the pieces and looking into the board, like you said, zooming in and out, seeing the person next to you. It's not the same thing.
Sure.
And so this brings a dream alive for me. And the only thing that I want to see next in this kind of space would be like an augmented reality kind of version where you do have to be around other people, but you get to see these models come alive in, like, with Star Wars, that like holographic chess game they play. Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be another thing on my wish list. But yeah, this is definitely a thing that's really a dream come true, I guess, from my childhood.
I was
Get to
talking to
do that.
Mo from Gen X Grown Up. We were talking about, what is Demio? Is it just a tabletop game in VR? And then we came to the conclusion that it is Gauntlet, the 1980s 4-player arcade cabinet Gauntlet, mixed with battle chess. Do you remember battle chess?
I do, yeah.
And it was essentially that, like you're saying, the Star Wars holographic chess, where you're moving everything around. Yeah, I think it's perfect. I'm completely in love with the game. And like you said, just like Walkabout Mini Golf, just like Rec Room, just like so many, they have put so much more into the game than you ever even knew was going to be there when you bought it originally, you know? So uh,
100%.
I'm extremely pleased with it. All right, so we're going to move on to meta prototypes. So you and I have not had too much of an opportunity to go into prototypes and all of these. Tell me, what have you heard?
I heard, so I heard a bit. I saw this video, of course, of the quick overview of the different prototypes. I also saw the video from the channel Tested, where I
Yes,
believe Norm, he was invited along to their prototyping space and
that
got to try
lucky
some of the
guy,
stuff out.
man. Why don't they call us? I don't understand why.
I know, like, well, yeah, I don't know. Maybe in the future we'll
Yeah,
be there.
we'll get
But
there.
yeah, I was definitely jealous. And yeah, so I know a bit about these headsets from those videos. I mean, what do you know so far, Greg? What was your
So Addie Roberts with The Verge, I like her a lot. She's been covering VR for The Verge for a number of years, and she had a pretty good take on it and a pretty good breakdown. Her breakdown was essentially there are four prototypes, and they have code names. Code names are Butterscotch, Starburst, Hollow Cake 2, and Mirror Lake.
Mhm.
So Butterscotch it's essentially a Quest 2 with a high resolution screen. You can read the bottom line of an eye chart on it, which I don't
Mhm.
think is particularly new. I mean, I remember people doing this on PCVR with the Vive, the Index. There were different tests. I forget what the name of the application was, but there was a utility you could get where you could stand there and look at an eye chart. You know, um, it was it worked really well. So this isn't anything new, and it apparently has a huge field of view where it
Mm.
fills up your entire vision, which I've not had. Have you tried any of the extremely like the Pimax, the wide vision VR headsets?
I, I haven't. No.
It it was great. So I was one of the people that signed up for the original 8K, and then I chose to go for the 5K, and I'm uh, I'm glad I did. I don't think I have not tried the 8K. I don't think the 8K is that much better than the 5K. At least people were reporting as much, but it is extremely wide.
Mm.
In a game where you have a bow and arrow, so you've got the bow. If you hold the bow parallel to the ground, you know, a bow probably in these old, you know, the games that are supposed to simulate like an old school bow, it's probably like 4 feet or so. It's pretty long. And in a standard Vive Index, anything like that, or in a Quest, you can't see the tips of the bow if you hold it parallel to the ground. But on the Pimax, you could see that and then like another foot in your vision.
Mm.
And I wouldn't say it was your full peripheral, but it was pretty darn close. It was so wide, in fact, that you realize that a lot of the things that are around you disappear when you're not looking at them. And then when you turn back, they reappear in order to save on processing speed. So you would just be standing there and you just kind of like, you know, move slightly as you do as a human. And all of a sudden a tree would appear next to you and then disappear because in a regular field of view, you wouldn't see it whatsoever. Uh, it's fantastic. I think it's what we need. I'm looking forward to that. But I don't think it's going to be here in the quests. At least it's not going to be in the quest for until next year or the year after that. The other Starburst, it's an HDR VR system. So like HDR, just like you know, what you're going to see on a television or a phone or any device where there's just a large color gamut. Um, it's according to them, they're saying it's the first HDR VR system. And in the conversation with Mark Zuckerberg, he was saying that in order to achieve this, you have to have a large amount of backlight. And
Mm.
you know what's being said is that you know this must be hard because these aren't coming out right now. And Zuckerberg is saying we're working hard to try to find a display that can do this much backlight. I think what they mean when they say that is that they're trying to find hard to find a display that does this much backlight at a consumer price. Because I think they can already do it. Uh, and according to him, it's orders of magnitude brighter, up to 20,000 nits.
Mm.
So, you know, what is your thought on something like this, HDR? Like, what's been your experience with HDR in the televisions? Uh, versus what you think the effect could be in VR?
Yeah, look, I mean, televisions can go, I think it's like 10,000 nits or so. They can go quite bright when compared to VR headsets. Um, and I think it's hard to. It's one of those things. It's hard to say until you've experienced it. I do know that when I watched the video from Tested, that when viewing these things, testing these headsets, they said some of it's hard to go back to regular VR after trying them out.
Sure.
And I think you're right in the sense that a lot of these things, because they are prototypes, they're not they're not like they're not consumer level at the moment. So I'll give you an example. We we've got, for example, the hollow cake, which we'll talk a bit more about later. But I know the hollow cake. It's the one on the end of that table that we're going to see a bit later on the video. But the hollow cake, and we've seen Bosworth wearing the hollow cake before, but that uses really thin lenses, and you'll be able to see on the headset that it's not the same as a regular headset where you got a lens and then a display projecting on those lenses. The holocake, what it does, it uses these really thin holograph lenses, if you like, and these specialized lasers, right? So these specialized lasers allow being through these lenses and essentially allow us to have a VR experience, but with a much thinner headset. Now, the problem is these lasers, they're not consumer ready. There's nothing on the
Hmm.
market that makes them viable. They're too costly, they're unsafe, and they're just, right now, they're not viable as a consumer product. So I think you're right with a lot of these concepts, a lot of these concept headsets, that they're fantastic. They've got some really good ideas there,
Right.
but in terms of bringing them to market, well, there's no real fully functioning headset that's been built yet from these concepts. And so, while they're promising, um, I think they've got to find viable ways of bringing them to the market because it's just not there yet.
Yeah, I'm excited. Plus, that hollow cake too, it looks like a bug, and I think it looks cool as hell. I think that's just. I might even try to. It's like the it's like the guys that wear the NES Power Glove. Like
Mm.
just around town when they go out to eat, they've got the Power Glove in their hand. I would do that with this headset. I think it's gorgeous. So yeah,
It,
so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, I think it does look nice. I wonder what kind of decals. We've got the decals you can have for the Quest 2, the stickers that go on the front. What kind of decals you could have, like fly eyes or something like that on the front? I think that actually suit it really well, like the way it looks.
It's total
Um,
Bono from YouTube, Bono mode. Remember back when he
yeah,
was the
yeah.
fly? Yeah, so I was taking a look at these, and I'll switch over here to the web. I just think they look freaking cool, man. And the weight savings, just because of the light refracting back and forth, it's going to be immense. I just think it looks fantastic.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people they don't want to wear a headset. I've heard complaints before. It just looks heavy, and
Yeah.
I get it, and I don't blame them. And it's just like photography. People, as soon as smartphones became convenient,
Mm.
that's when people started getting more into photography. It was all about just the convenience. So
That's right. And I think that's a massive barrier to people using it, especially
right,
for work.
yeah.
The last thing I
Oh
want to
yeah,
do, and there's a report out showing that most people as well wearing VR headsets for work is uncomfortable. People don't want to do
right,
it, and I understand that. And this
sure.
is the step towards as well that future where we might be wearing VR headsets more for work purposes. I just don't think we're quite there yet. But these kind of headsets, and I'll just put it out there that it's not standalone headset. So that headset we just saw, the Holocake, is not standalone. It runs any PC VR title, but it isn't standalone too. So that's going to help it thinner with its form factor, make it thinner and give it a slimmer form factor.
On that tested video with Norm,
Mm,
Zuckerberg addressed that. He was saying that they care more about the visuals than they do the processing and in this
mm.
scenario. So they're going to do things in layers. And then once they get the visuals looking good, maybe by then the processor will be good enough that they won't have to do anything. But if not, then they'll start working on the processor to get it up to snuff. And that's something I wanted to talk to you about. What are your feelings on realistic VR? You're talking about, you know, VR that looks photorealistic. I'm surprised that I'm saying this, but I don't think I need it, although I do want it. But what are your feelings on it?
I'm quite the opposite. I feel like I need it. I feel like I want it, in terms of anything that's gonna make my experience more realistic, more immersive, I
Sure,
want. So,
sure.
we saw the one of the prototypes, I don't know the name of it, but, and if you might be able to remind me, but the prototype that had a higher resolution, are they developing that has the high resolution?
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. It came out like a year and a half or so ago.
Well, the prototypes that we were showing in this video, one of them they were
Oh, I
working on
got
that
you.
was like a high resolution type,
Yeah, that was the
um,
butterscotch. It was a high resolution
butterscotch.
screen. Yeah,
That's the one. So the prototype we saw in that video, um, is trying to pass that Turing test. So the Turing test is making things look as realistic as possible. And what they've achieved so far now, to get it fidelity looking as close to realistic, you need 60 pixels per degree. What they've achieved so far is 55 pixels per degree. So they're getting there
they're
in
getting there
terms
for
of that
sure.
realism looking
Yeah,
kind of thing. But to achieve that, I think they really had to also shrink the field of view too.
yeah,
So, there's it's not like you're getting the same field of view as you would with the Quest 2. I think they had to shrink it to half that of the Quest 2 in order to achieve that 55 pixels. So again, like I say, these are concepts and we're not quite there yet. But anything that's going to make my experience more realistic and immersive is something I want.
yeah, for
And so
sure.
Turing test all the way. Yeah, I'm really for that. I want them to achieve that as soon as possible because I think as soon as I experience as realistic looking visuals, I'm not going to be able to go back. It's going to be hard to actually go back to like, you know, than these other headsets.
What's currently the most realistic thing that you've seen in VR?
Well, I'd probably, and there's probably more realistic games out, but Half-Life Alex. 'Cause I
Oh
play
yeah,
a lot of standalone VR,
yeah,
but that's one of the PC VR games I have played.
yeah,
Obviously, because it's one of the best PC VR games out there,
for
possibly the
sure.
best. And yeah, Half-Life Alex. Yeah, it's been
Have you
my favorite.
seen? It's supposed to be Iceland, and you're on a beach, like a black beach, and you've got water coming in, and you can kind of move inland. That's the most realistic thing I've seen, and it wasn't any more than that, you know. And it looked great, but that's the most realistic thing. I was very surprised at something like Rec Room, and I spent a lot of time in Rec Room. I probably spent about a year and a half only playing Rec Room, and I
Mm,
was really surprised by the realism, but perhaps I just realized, but perhaps the realism was more interesting to me because of the social aspect. I was talking to a person, and the fact that they
mm,
looked like a Playmobil character or a Lego character didn't matter to me as much as the fact that they were actually responding in a way that makes sense. And there was at the time there was someone that showed eye tracking, and I forget what the device was, but eye tracking. They were showing it on and off. So off, it's basically just looks like a Barbie doll. I mean, the person's mouth is moving, but as they look left and right, their eyes stayed still.
mm,
But as soon as they turn on eye tracking, it was like it came to life. You know, the person can be looking over here, talking, gesturing with the hand like they can already, but then they can look at you. And there's something so
mm,
much more lifelike that you see as soon as they start moving their eyes. And as much as I mean, I've always been a graphics nerd. I've always wanted
mm,
better graphics. I'd look at the back cover of a game if it had good graphics, but it was a crappy game, I would buy that over the good game that had crappy graphics. But at this
mm.
point, that experience of actually having, like, I'd rather than work on social experiences than graphics. But believe me, the graphics is just behind my desire for them to increase social experiences. Um, so the last prototype they had there was Mirror Lake. Uh, it's aspirational. It's never been built.
Mm.
And this is the one that we were talking about, or no, Holocake is the one we were talking about earlier. But the Mirror Lake, they say it looks like ski goggles, which I think the Holocake too looks a lot like ski goggles. It would incorporate the thin optics of Holocake to the HDR capabilities of Starburst and the resolution of Butterscotch. So it's just kind of like here's the three things that we just discussed, put them all into one, and we're they're giving it a name, Mirror Lake. But Michael Abresh says it shows what a complete next-gen display system could look like. So I'm thinking 5 to 10 years out. Like we're not talking 2 years. We're talking quite a while from now.
I think so. Yeah. And I think it's going to be a case of like, in the 90s, you remember those big brick Nokia phones that you could use they doubled up as like a, excuse me, they doubled up as like a lethal weapon because
Right.
they were so heavy and brick-like.
For sure.
And I think it's going to be a similar kind of case. These headsets are the Nokia bricks of the 90s. And then, and then in 10 years time, we're going to have those, the thinner headsets that, and we're not going to be able to go back to these, except look back and go, wow, how far we've come.
Sure. So is there going to be like the Zach Morris headset, just like there was the Zach Morris phone? Remember from Saved by the Bell, he had the old 80s cell phone, which was the giant brick thing. And so everyone of a certain generation, I think, referred to that as the Zach Morris phone. So the current headsets are going to be the Zach Morris headsets. So according to Eddie Roberts with The Verge, that the whole purpose of this, because I agree, I could not figure out what the heck this was all about. I mean, I loved it, but like, why are they showing off this? And apparently SIGGRAPH is coming up, and this is just a preview before SIGGRAPH, which makes me think that they're going to have an announcement at SIGGRAPH, and they didn't want this to muddy that announcement. But she also made a point of, here's what's not coming. What do you think she meant by that?
I'm not sure, like what they're not working on or what they...
Yeah, here's what consumers shouldn't expect in the next, year, even like maybe 2+ years at the very, very least. So, are they telling us that it's harder to create these technologies than they expected? Did they overpromise, and are they under delivering?
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure. Like we can speculate. I think that definitely there's some limitations there. I don't think we're there yet. There's obviously some physical limitations into how small, slim, light you can have these headsets, but we've got a long way to go. But like you said, it's all about sourcing viable components, like viable lasers, viable components that are cost effective, safe, and all these kind of things to bring these to market. And from what I heard on the videos that were showing these prototypes, we're just not there yet. And how long that will take to design these products, design these components, or find them, source them, or for them to come down in price enough to be usable, it's sort of anyone's guess. But like you said, like 5 to 10 years, there's got to be some movement in that area, I would expect.
Sure.
And I did have a question, because you mentioned earlier you tried the Pimax, right? And so it had a wider field of view. Now, none of these prototypes that we saw Zuckerberg showing off, none of them were working on making that a massive field of view, making it a lot wider than it is previously, from what I understand.
The Butterscotch is supposed to have a high resolution screen with a huge field of view. It's your entire field of vision, which is more than I got on the Pimax. The Pimax was almost my entire field of vision, but not entirely.
So this is my question on that, because that can be a bit of a blessing and a curse, right? Because obviously you want a greater field of view, more realistic, more immersive, and all that kind of stuff. But motion sickness. I don't know if you suffer from motion sickness, but one of the advantages of having that sort of locked into that tight field of view would be that you don't suffer from motion sickness to the extent that you would if it filled up your whole field of vision. Now, did you find more motion sickness when using the Pimax compared to something, say, like the Quest?
I got the Pimax right when it came out. Within, I was one of the first people to get it within the first 3 months that they started releasing it. And I had so much trouble with it, and there was so much distortion that it became more headache inducing than vomit inducing. But I can honestly tell you that I never got motion sick with that wide of a display. But it does make sense that a smaller display is going to cut down on motion sickness, because that's exactly what we see, because they always, crop it down to just like a small circle until you stop moving and then bring it back out. But now that you say it, it's very surprising. But another thing about the Pimax, which you may not be considering, is it's not just wider, it was also taller. I felt like I had way more vision above and below. So maybe it's not just the horizon and the left to right, because I think it's the left to right that makes you sick, not the up and down. I had so much more up and down, so much more sky and so much ground beneath me, that maybe it all kind of balanced out.
Is it hard to go to something like the Quest after trying the Pimax?
If I used
Do you feel
nothing
spoiled?
but the Pimax for quite a while, yes, it
Mm,
would bother me. However, this goes
mm,
back to the point I was making about like photography and smartphones and how a lot of people became photographers because it was so much more convenient. The Quest is so convenient, including the Quest 1. It was so convenient that I basically hardly even used my PCVR, which I cannot believe I'm saying that because I have a Vive Pro, Pimax, I have an Index. I love it. Rift, CV1. I love PCVR. But, at this point, $300 gets me, I can stand anywhere I want in my house. I don't have to go down to a room where I have my lighthouses set up. And now that I can play PCVR wirelessly, and I know a lot of people say that they don't experience a perfect experience through the Quest 2 doing like PCVR. I do. I don't know. Maybe
mm,
I'm just lucky. There's not, a lot of people here. There's just me and the dog. So there's not a lot of people that are using up the bandwidth, right? But I
yeah.
basically have a flawless experience doing wireless PCVR over the Quest, and I primarily use Virtual Desktop for that. I don't use AirLink. Um, yeah. So are you looking forward to that wider experience? And are you afraid that it's just going to make you sick that you're going to have to give up VR?
Oh, look, I think that's something they're going to have to keep in mind when they're developing greater field of views. They can't do one without the other,
Right.
unless they want to really um, make people's experiences, their first experience of potentially a VR, a bad one.
Right.
They're gonna have to develop both in conjunction. And this is just an assumption, but I'd assume both things would advance along with each other. So they would advance ways of reducing motion sickness at the same time they're increasing field of view, because that's going to be a problem. So I'm not too worried that increasing field of view would also make me more motion sick. Also, I feel like I've trained myself to become less motion sick. I could barely play for 5 minutes when I first started with VR. Now I
Really?
can play for hours, and yeah.
Were you one of those people that just standing there you got sick without moving?
No, no. So to be clear, is those games where, like, for example, the port of Quake, Doctor Beast port of
Oh
Quake on the
God.
Quest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm not going to be doing
yeah.
that,
Like,
man. Yeah.
1 minute and I'm done. But that now I can play it for like an hour or so, and I'm fine. So
Sure.
I've built up that tolerance, and I believe it's a lot like in the earlier days, right? People would get sick playing Doom on the flat screen monitor because they'd never encountered anything that fast paced. They get motion sickness back then. But obviously nowadays you don't hear so much about that. And I think that's because people adjust. And I think it's going to be the similar thing with VR too. The more you use it, the more you're just going to adjust to those kind of things. But to answer your question, because I think I went off on a tangent, yes, I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to it in the same reason I'm looking forward to graphics becoming more realistic. And that's immersion, presence, and just getting that full high fidelity experience. It just means a better VR experience all around. And I can't begin to imagine what it would be like to have your whole field of vision covered by the screen. But I can imagine, like I said, it's going to be difficult to go back once I've experienced it. That's my feeling. So
Yeah.
absolutely, I'm looking
Definitely.
forward to that. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Anything that makes it more realistic. Like I said, the thing that I always want is I want to stand on Mars and feel like I'm on Mars. I want to get to a
Mm.
point where every single thing that I've ever wanted, time travel, aliens, blowing giant things up while I walk slowly away and looking cool, like in an 80s movie. I want all those things. Then I think VR can deliver 95% of that experience because very first time I got in VR and I've told you this before, and I saw a UFO hovering above me. I was amazed. It felt like a UFO. And although I know it's not really a UFO, it gave me that satisfaction. First time I ever stood on Mars in VR, I just stood there. I just looked around, saw the wind blowing the dust. I mean, it was extremely satisfying. And
Mm.
I don't think there's any reason that we have to, uh, you know, we don't have to do those actual things. I don't ever have to truly time travel if I can feel like I am time traveling or whatever the heck it is. So uh, now on the motion sickness thing, I've tried everything there is. And I think at the end of the day, I've just played so much that I'm better, but I can guarantee you there is a point where I will still get motion sick.
Mm.
And the people that give anyone a hard time about getting motion sick, like, come on, man. It's like, I'm not choosing to be motion sick. I don't want to be motion sick. I was that kid that got motion sick on the bus sometimes when I was little. It's likely all related, and as I've gotten older, I think it's gotten better. So last question on the motion sickness thing. Have you seen the motion sickness as it's gotten better in VR? Have you seen it getting better like on roller coasters or anywhere else if you got sick on those?
That's a great question. So as a kid, like the same thing, I used to get motion sick on cars and roller coasters and same thing. I haven't actually had an opportunity to test it to that point yet. So as I got older, it's got better. I
I'm
don't really get
expecting that
motion
video
sickness
from you
anymore.
right now, man. I need you to go and get a GoPro. I need you to get on get
Yeah,
on a roller coaster and let's find out.
yeah, yeah. I'd love to. You send me the tickets, I'll go. I'll go and I'll be yeah, absolutely. I'll love to test it out because um, I think. I haven't been to a theme park or anything like that. I'd love to try it out though.
Yeah.
It's something that I am seriously curious about whether that transfers to other situations, like being on a boat and seasickness. Am I
Oh
going to
yeah.
be more immune to that?
I'm not doing that.
Now that yeah,
I'll still get sick, I think.
yeah.
A roller coaster I'll do, but a boat, it just seems like it's going to be too much. All right. So the last thing I want to talk about. And the last thing I wanted to talk about was the Meta Pay for metaverse purchases. It's basically this. They took Facebook Pay, which I never used, and I can't imagine too many people used anyway. They changed its name to MetaPay, and now they're trying to wrap it around the VR, topic of VR. And as much as I understand why people want to beat up Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook as a whole for privacy and all these things, at the end of the day, if we're going to have anything that looks like a metaverse, and by metaverse, I mean the term that we were using long before they changed the name to Meta and started using metaverse. It's the thing that we already do in VR chat. It's the thing that we all do online when we're doing social VR. That's the metaverse. It's been there. They all have monetary systems, or a lot of them do. You can buy things, that whole thing. If you're going to have a metaverse, you're going to have some type of some method of currency and purchasing things. Otherwise, it's never going to take off. So people are giving, I think, Facebook, Meta, Mark Zuckerberg a hard time for this. Like, oh, look, now they're directly talking about money. They want in my pocket. I don't know what else they're supposed to do. They have to do this if they're going to make this into, like a day-to-day thing that you do. So how do you feel about that?
Oh, look, there's always going to be the naysayers, I think, when these new
Sure.
things come along. And sometimes ideas are going to work out and sometimes they need to be changed or scrapped altogether. It's
Right.
all comes with the territory, I think, of, say what you like about Meta. And trust me, I've got plenty of criticism as well to level at Meta. They're not perfect in some of those things that I think they've done in the past. But say what you like about them. But what the development of their prototypes that we just saw recently has really pointed out to me is they're really willing to front up that money to try to spearhead development into what is unknown territory, and sometimes it might not
For
work
sure.
out, and they'll catch flack for that, absolutely,
Yeah.
because it's new territory. We
Yeah.
don't know where we're headed, and sometimes it might not work out. But I think, just like yourself, I think this is a great step. I think that eventually they will need some sort of payment system, and at the end of the day, Facebook, they're not doing this out of their kindness of their hearts. I mean, eventually they do want to, I guess, develop, make money and be an industry leader because of that. Because in the long term, I mean, I think Mark Zuckerberg was saying that investors in the metaverse, in Meta, don't expect returns on your investment until 2030. So this is the long game that they're playing.
Yeah. You know what? The
Uh,
2030 sounds like really far away. It's already 2022. So I have to keep reminding myself that we live in the far future. Uh,
yeah.
yeah, I'm not saying I'm a fan of Mark Zuckerberg, but I also think if there's anyone that's going to take a charge on bringing VR to the masses, it needs to be a company the size of Facebook, the size of Apple, the size of Google. Google's efforts, I think, were tremendous. I know
Mm.
they didn't turn into something that we're all using every day, but I guarantee you every single one of those guys are probably working at Meta right now, or they're working at Apple, or they're working at some company that's doing something right on the horizon. And that excites me. Yeah, I guess we'll see where it's all going to end up. So, Tony, it looks like we made it through another live stream without possibly destroying the internet or our reputations. So, as a reminder, this is a weekly YouTube live stream hosted by Tony with VR Reviews and myself, Greg of King of Nerds. We discuss VR games, experiences, utilities, and hardware we've discovered, purchased, or played over the past week, as well as all VR news that's fit to discuss. You can find us here on Thursdays at 10 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, which is 6 p.m. New York and 8 a.m. Melbourne. Tony, thank you so much for your time this week. I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Greg. It's been a pleasure.
All right, thank you.